little live feed here and a little update on exactly what's been going on here. And there's a lot. It's considerable. We have several different situations going on in the field, and if you're in, come on in, man. What's up, Ken? Good to see you, man. Feeling better. Got a lot of stuff going on. What's up, Hoosier? How you guys doing? How's everybody doing tonight, man? You have a good day at work? If you're out west, man, are you just getting off work? Are you hanging in there? Are you doing okay? Hopefully. What's up, Dennis? V, what's up? What's going on, V? Good to see you guys. What did you guys think of that last film? Interesting comparisons, right? Some good solid data there, for sure. It was fun to do it. Really, really fun to do that. What's up, Stacy? Joe? David W. How you guys doing? B, what's up? Just got back in town. Gonna stop by in the morning? The fence or my house? Either one's fine. What's going on, Kat? Rindels, Ken, Justin, Dave G. All you guys are in tonight, man. That's cool. That's cool. Been a lot going on. A lot going on. Darn, this is nice. Feeling groovy. I'm feeling groovy too. Despite everything. You know what I mean? I got that severe connective tissue tear in my elbow, which makes it feel like my arm's broken 24 hours a day anytime I do anything. So the doctor had me on some kind of steroid or something. It's horrible. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of taking steroids like that, but it's not cool at all. It's nausea. It's, it's like this. Your hands are shaking. But I'm not sick, and my back is much better. In fact, we were in the field. Scott came down Friday, Thursday night. So we went in the field on Thursday at night, and of course I'm taking my CBD. Went in the field on Thursday, and what's up, Bob? It was quiet. It was very quiet. We shot with thermals. It was really fun, but also it's like hell right now, man. It's so hot. It's so muggy. And the bugs are just like right on you, you know what I mean? And you're trying to shoot and they're on your hand and they're stinging the shit out of you. And it's nuts. You know what I mean? It's nuts. And it was quiet. We got a couple of thermal signatures in the distance, which, it is what it is. You're just like, I don't know what that is. And everybody goes, I don't know what that is either. But it's there. And it's far away. And that's about the end of that. You know what I mean? If they're close, then it's like completely different. They weren't actually in the area that we had the encounter. Towards the end of the expedition, it became obvious that they were about 500 yards off because one of them screamed. And I mean, he let out a roar, dude. And we all stopped and looked and started to shoot. And a pack of coyotes erupted in mid-scream of this huge hominoid scream, right? All three of us heard it. I don't know that we got the hominoid scream on film, but we certainly got the last part. It was like we were all scrambling to hit record, and the coyotes erupted and kind of like interrupted the whole thing. But we did manage to get it. It was kind of cool. And it was like kind of cool confirmation because what happened was I was quiet all night and then I let off a roar of my own and that's what triggered him. And then the coyotes came in. So what's up there, Big T? How you doing? So we're feeling good. We're feeling better. Saturday we went in the field and we investigated a couple different places. And then, Friday. And then Saturday morning we went into a place that we haven't been in a while. First time Scott's ever been there with us. Now, Scott's had action with us every place that he's been, incredible stuff. incredible stuff, once in a lifetime kind of stuff, and we've been very shocked at some of it and the way it's been happening, but it's going on. And the one thing that he hasn't actually had an opportunity to do is get a whiff, right? Because it's been, through the winter. Now we're coming into the summer. So we went over to this one place, man, where they have a tendency to be a little more whiffy, and they were definitely stinking. And you could smell them. You heard stick pops, all kinds of stuff. And then we even at the end were convinced that there was at least one within 60 or 70 feet of us in this real thick stuff. But the scent was so powerful. It wasn't August powerful, like, the month of August, because that's when it's the worst. It's the hottest month of the year. By then they're just like stinky armpits and butt and all that stuff. But it was bad. And so I was like, throughout the expedition into this area, it seemed like more like ambient or leftover smell. In that particular area, somebody was there. There was no doubt. The intensity of the smell, the movement in the bush that we heard, it was really cool. We shot footage, a lot of footage. Oh, found a couple tracks too, and recognized that there's an area where we found the tracks, and where Melanie in particular found one track that was shut down with an order of prosecution for trespassing into this one particular spot within this area, which is highly unusual. They were using weather damage as an excuse. Seriously, probably not weather damage. We had smell coming out of that area, weird movement. I think there's a good chance that some of these people are very aware. They're aware that these guys are in there. So anyway, Mel was pissed, man. She's like, I can't believe these people are just telling us we can't even use the trails that we pay for. You know what I mean? She goes off. So I thought that was kind of cool. We did the expedition. It was great. And I started reviewing footage today. Managed to pull a couple frames out right where we thought they were going to be, according to our data on previous expeditions. They were on the fringe. They were out away from the trails that the humans use in the daytime, in the heat, inside these huge cypress hammocks that basically offer temperature variation. And so we were focused real heavy on shooting that because it's consistency in our theory that continues to bring us data in. And again, it didn't fail. It didn't disappoint. I'm breaking the footage down now. We should have a film this week. Tomorrow I'll be balls out on the film and trying to get that done for you guys. And then I think Scott's out of town for a little while. But Scott and I were talking while we were in the field, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to start a division of crypto reality in the state of Maine, and Scott's going to head that up for us, and I'm going to make a trip up to Maine, and we're going to iron out exactly where these things are at in Scott's area. So we're planning all of that stuff now. It's still tentative as far as when, but I talked to Scott today. Mel and I talked about it over the weekend after Scott left, and I think it's a good idea. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the same theories that we use here in Florida, in Maine, to find their areas, and we're going to show you the entire process so that, in the hopes that you guys can use it. If you're researching in the field, you can actually literally see from square one how we go into an area butt naked with no information, and use the theories that we're using down here to locate viable habitat, and then hopefully begin to document these guys. So we got that going on. We've got this situation down here with Brian. It's looking real good. B's back in town. I just saw him in here. I'm going to get with him tomorrow. Brian, I'll give you a buzz, and let's get together and start banging our heads. Over the next 2 weeks, Scott's gone, so I'm going to try to focus on our primary areas, and then the area that Brian's working right now. I think that's a good idea. I'll tell you what. Thursday night, Mel was hanging out with her daughters, and Scott and I went in the field by ourselves. We went over to the pasture where we're pulling the hair, and it was real quiet, and there were no thermal signatures save the cows, right? There's cows all through there. And so we went down in right at dusk. First, we went on the north side, and we did some tracking to try to find some tracks. There were tons of cows. A couple of bulls started to get a little testy, given the stare down thing, like they're, you know, heavily focused on me and Scott. So we kind of backed off because there's no controlling these things, right? They're out in the open, and you're in there with them. And so we were like, yeah, let's go ahead and go to the other side. We got away from those big bulls, went over to the other side, and it was real quiet. There were some cows there, but we took a chance. So we went down, and we went down into the pasture area, and we got out by this big prairie, and the fence runs down, and then it takes a sharp 90, and it runs to the east, right? So we're looking at a southerly direction along the fence, and then there's a post, and it goes to the east. All along that fence, we're walking on the west side of it. On the east side of that fence is where we've been catching them on film, where you see the guy jumping and all that. So we paid heavy attention to that with the thermals. We started to get towards the end of that fence, and Scott, I think, was picking up some kind of a signature because he was lagging about 50 yards behind me. All of a sudden, it sounded like a stampede. Now, I took a step back because there was a bush in front of me. I couldn't see what was going on. And as I did, and I rounded back, about a 275-pound wild boar came charging out of the bushes and was coming straight at me. And several cows, a bunch of piglets, exploded out of these bushes. Now, we don't know what happened, but I was freaking out, right? Because I got this boar coming at me. And it was a legitimate boar, had 3.5-inch tusks on it. And it was full on grunting, and he was getting it, coming straight at me. I thought he saw me, and he was just charging me. And so I was preparing myself for a fight, right? Basically, with an almost 300-pound hog. I pretty much shit myself. And then it became real obvious. All of a sudden, the boar screamed, and I saw him notice me. So he hadn't seen me. This joker cut back and took off. And then all of a sudden the female came and started to follow the boar and a couple of piglets. Well, I noticed that a bunch of these piglets scattered, and they weren't staying with the sow. In fact, at the same time that was going on, cows were literally ramming the fence trying to get out of these bushes. There was something in those bushes that spooked these animals. I don't know what it was because we didn't see it, and we definitely didn't pick up any thermal signatures, but it seemed to me that when the noise started, it was about 40 yards back inside the bush, and it's real thick, so we couldn't pick up any thermal signatures from the animals that were coming out. So when I was filming, there was nothing there. And then suddenly, boom, all these huge animals came out. I thought I was going to die with this hog coming at me. It was nuts, man. So that shook me up. Scott was laughing. I don't think Scott actually saw the boar that was, charging me, but so it was a little unnerving, man. And so we went to the back area. Another piglet was scrambling. It seemed to me something spooked these animals out of there. It's kind of unusual for the piglets to just scatter. Normally they stay with the female, but they didn't. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it was one of those younger guys that we caught on film a couple weeks ago that was jumping, or perhaps the guy that was out of the bushes and was running. Either way, it was frightening. Anyway, let's take some questions if you got any. Got a lot of comments. Cat Bigfoot, welcome. This is your first time. B, you like that video? Good. We're working as hard as we can. I basically ran myself ragged until I got sick. So been binge watching. So let's see. Yeah, hit that thumbs up, guys. Hit that thumbs up. That's good. We got a lot going on here on YouTube, right? Like we're that last video has got some really, really interesting data on it, and we're just not able to get views, man. And it's kind of telling. You know what I mean? It's interesting to me that you can talk about Bigfoot and get 300,000 views, but conclusive data showing these guys with hair samples and all of this stuff that we got going on, and we get like 1 or 2 thousand views on them. I don't know. We'll see, man. We'll see. We're working as hard as we can. I don't see any other questions here. Hoosiers going down to Punta Borda, going to hit Mayaca. That's a great spot. Prepare yourself for some extreme heat, man. It's like this time of year in Mayaca, it's like breathing underwater, man. The humidity is absolutely off the charts. The heat, a lot of gators right now, so be careful. And just because there's no water does not mean that there's no gators. When you go off trail and you're even though you're nowhere near water, you can walk up on a 14-foot alligator in that jungle out there. Melanie and I have done it. We had situations where we had stuff in the bushes going on, and we're sitting there filming, and we leave, and it sounds like something's following us. We go back to the campsite, get the car, pack the stuff, and we're leaving, and there's a 14-foot alligator right where we exited the forest, and the game wardens are trying to direct traffic. Came out of the woods where we were. They transit in this time of year because the water levels in different places in the park are shifting. So you may have an area where water has dropped significantly, and the big male gators are bailing because they're trying to go find better water sources, and another part is deeper, so they're trying to get to that. They'll cut right through the forest over there, so be careful when you're in there. And that place it's incredible. It's Jurassic Park, man. That's what it is. Let's see if we got any other kind of questions. No, we're not going. We're definitely not. You definitely, Tracy, definitely don't want to go anywhere we go naked. That's not something you want to do. and you know that because you've seen it. That place you went with us for the members camp out was nuts. Let's see. Thoughts on Dave Shealy's Sasquatch footage in Florida? I don't know. I interviewed Dave in 2010 down there at the research station, and he's got a huge snake back there. It's like 22 feet long, man. This thing's huge. But he was under contract with Discovery Channel at the time, and I don't think they ended up actually using the show that they shot. They had choppers and all this stuff. We were talking with him about that. But I've been very aware of Dave for a long time, and to be honest with you, in the beginning, Dave was one of the motivators to get me to start looking into things down here. Having been out there and not seen anything, taking reports, but I've been out there so long, I hadn't seen anything, so I kind of gravitated towards his information. I don't know. What I do know is there are variations in what this species can look like, and it's likely that him and his brother actually got footage of one of these things. It's rare to catch them out in the open, but I've seen the footage, and I've seen the images, and it looks like one to me. I mean, you never know, man. What I can tell you is the old adage that people somehow do this, just to make money is ridiculous. You don't make money at this. It's a lot of work, and even though he has his little research station in the museum and all that stuff, the guy's been dedicated to this for decades, and so I'm inclined to think that him and his brother did see something. The evidence of trauma and PTSD and the interest is there. I think it's highly likely that what he has is probably real, man. Bigfoot Explorer. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hopefully more people will speak highly of what we're doing, and it'll catch on. You know what I mean? So, do you think the deliberate water management is to control the gators or the Bigfoot? Dave, listen, water management is about flooding, and anything on the outside of that particular issue is incidental. What I do know is that the water management systems are in the exact areas that these guys had been pushed to in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and then 70s when the developmental boom came. They made a lot of adjustments on the water control system here in South Florida. I know a lot about the water management control system in South Florida because I'm a big snook fisherman, and for 25 years, I rely heavily on information about the water control gates and the whole system. You know what I mean? where are they dumping water? If they used to dump it east in these floodgates, and they dump into brackish water into the intercoastal, and the snook line up at these spillways in the freshwater, and all the freshwater bait fish, the bluegill, the largemouth bass, the crappie, the sunfish, the shad, different types of catfish get pushed through from the water management district, right? And the snook are there eating it, and that's where we fish, you know? So in studying all that stuff for my fishing purposes, I gained a lot of knowledge that I use now in my research. Water levels are important, man. These things, while they are adaptive in these wet areas, and they do use the water, and they're very comfortable in it, is what our data shows and our experiences in the field. They prefer dry land, obviously, right? They want to have someplace dry. So water levels are key in a lot of our research, and especially this time of year. When we start getting into this afternoon rain, where we're getting 2 inches of rain every afternoon, 3 inches of rain, 5,000 lightning strikes in a 3-hour span, because our home is east of the swamp, directly east of the swamp. And then on the north side of us, we have 70,000 acres of state forest and swamp in there. So we're constantly being inundated by these storms that develop over these huge wilderness areas with all the swampland. I look at the water management system as like, it's incidental that we're finding and documenting these creatures in these water management areas. It's really about keeping the adjacent communities on the eastern side in the development areas from flooding, right? Because everything down here is at less than a foot of sea level right in this area. And so it's real important they do that. But I do use it, right? If I go to a new area, if I'm heading down south, and I've done a lot of research over the years, so I've already kind of got this information. What I've noticed is the water management areas that are no trespassing, they're in there. They're in these spots. It's not that they made it no trespassing because of the Bigfoot. It's about the water management stuff. You know what I mean? And so, when you start doing investigations and you down here and you run into this water management district brick wall, which is really what it is. They have so much property that's no trespassing. It's, it's like kind of crazy, man. You start getting out there and you're like, you're picking up tracks, and you track an individual barefoot, and he goes right into an area you're not allowed to go. It's frustrating, but you kind of got to watch that. So I hope that answers your question. It's more about flooding, and it's incidental that they're in these areas. The gators are either nuisance or they're not. If they're not, they're left alone. If they become nuisance, they're removed. And I happen to know an area where they put these nuisance alligators, and we fished it quite a bit. There's a bunch of double-digit bass out in these areas. My brother and I pounded these areas, and there's hundreds of gators over 10 feet out in these areas, and they are nasty ones too. So let's see what else we got. Bigfoot Explorer wants to do a show with me. He can email me at cryptoreality.us@gmail.com. Robert, this is for you, right? The FLIR shot, that was us trying to get the one that I saw on film, right? And so what we did was we continued to do the same thing that produced the encounter, right? Like, we know the area they hang in because they've been there for 5 years, and we've experienced this, right? I've seen them out there, and we've had many experiences in calling them on film, tracked them. There's no doubt, right? From a research standpoint, we know where they're at. So really what it is if we stay predictable and keep our controls, right? We can't control the Sasquatch. We have to control what we do. So we do the exact same thing every time. We had that encounter knowing that it was going to happen sooner or later. It happened immediately, right? 3 expeditions with Scott with the thermals, and bam, we had this encounter. So our goal was to go back and try to confirm it, because when I had the encounter, I couldn't record with the device. The USB port to hook it to an actual camera wasn't working, right? Scott, I think, got a price on it. They wanted $2,000 to replace a USB port so that we could plug it into one of our cameras, because this particular model FLIR doesn't have any recording options on it, right? So we had to ixnay that. Scott ended up buying another FLIR, and I started to use the one he was using. In the end, we continued to do the same exact things. And then what we noticed was we were having trouble because we were picking up heat signatures, but they were further back in the bush. So the night that I got the shot, that big blobby thermal shot, when we were going in, I decided, look, you guys take a right and head down to the encounter spot, and I'm going to go out into that area, into the swamp by myself, and I'm going to try to backdoor them, because the prior expeditions before that, after the encounter, but subsequent to the encounter, they seemed to be back. It was almost like the encounter freaked them out and pushed them back a little ways into the wooded area. So I was going to go in there by myself. They went down, took a right. I took off into the hole, and it was unnerving. And I'm shooting with thermal, no weapons. I start to head down into the area, and I picked up. I ran into a huge blockade of downed trees. It looked manipulated. It was dark, so I was like, "Why is this here? This wasn't here before." I went around it. Well, it turns out they were right on the other side of it. I was within 10 feet of them. There were some light heat signatures coming through it, but you get used to picking up these small heat signatures in bush, and it ends up being a bird. So I thought that's what it was. When I went around it, I swung a wide hooking circle, and I was about 45 yards probably. I turned like this, and that was what I saw. Now, at first, I thought, what is this I'm staring at? Because I could see the wood pile behind it when I pulled the thermal down. Now, I had a night vision monocular on this eye, and I was using this eye for the thermal. So I've got the headgear and all that stuff in this night vision. And it's hot, there's bugs and all that stuff. And it really is difficult when you're using this much technology. So I shut the night vision off and tried to let my eyes adjust a little bit. And I couldn't see anything. And I put the thermal back up, and there's this heat signature there. Well, I didn't notice that it had this huge head at first. There was some bush in the way. And I kind of eased around it, and that was when I saw the face. And then the shoulder is sticking up off of it. You can see the muscle in this thing's shoulder. And it's the exact individual that I had the encounter with. It's just that I was by myself in there with them. And so at that point, I was like, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My blood ran cold. And I realized I got to go back around him to get out of here. So what I did was I cut straight out into the prairie and got out of all that bush, and then swung a real wide arc about 50 to 75 yards around that particular individual. And I was watching, but strategically, and this is what I think it is, right? I think there was a couple of them, and they were all around him. I think they saw and heard me coming and got right up on him and were huddled with him. I think that the top part of it is obvious. You can see the individual, then you can even see the shoulder coming off of him. But I think there are a couple of them. I think that's his family, and there's a couple individuals. I know when I did see him 2 months prior, there were two females. I think now, having looked back at the encounter, I think there were two females with him. And I think he's got two females. I think he's like, they're doing a little three-way, a little Sasquatch three-way, man. And I think they were all over him, and I think that's what that blob is. I think it's the females. That guy, that's the second time that, and I know that in looking at it, it was real hard, like when we examined the footage, to see if there were any other individuals. At one point in the real brief clip, I saw another brow ridge, and it kind of like turned a little bit, and you could see it. But I think he was with two females, and I think they were kind of like all over him. And Scott and I had conversations about this. Researchers around the country have witnessed this kind of thing where they huddle together, and it's real hard to tell where one of them ends and the other one begins. This, I think, is just primate behavior, man. You know what I mean? I mean, there are great apes that do the same thing. They huddle together. Females have the young all over them. When they're at rest, they're kind of lounging around on each other, and I think it's typical type of behavior. But that was a situation. I got out of there, and I gave him a wide berth on the way out just in case, and it was interesting because when I was shooting it, and I really recognized that was the face that I saw through the FLIR thermal, but it was orange through the FLIR. My blood ran cold, man. I was like, oh my God. And it was huge. It was huge. This thing was on the ground, and it was 4.5 feet sitting. You know what I mean? And the head on this thing is immense, man. I mean, you can see it in the thermal and in the drawing. That's kind of, I tried to do it life size. That's why I used it on a canvas. So, right, I drew it on canvas. But so that's the story behind that thermal. And like, look, that's not good enough for me, right? So I'm not jumping for joy about that, short clip that I shot, because the bottom line was I was freaked out. I was by myself and I thought they were going to get me. You know what I mean? Everything worked out, but what would have happened being that I was by myself? What would have happened if I went over there? Would we still be having this conversation right now? Or would I have been all over, 17 different Bigfoot channels because I came up missing, or they found me with my neck broken or my arms broken or something? I don't know. I just know it's always better to be safe. And so being that I was by myself, I pulled out and went around. So um, let's see if we got any other questions. Okay, Jack, play it loud, baby. Jack, I've been recording my CD. That's another thing I wanted to mention this for you, Jack. I've got 4 songs down now. We're gonna have 8 or 10 on the album. I've been working on leads and trying to play in spite of my arm, But it's coming out good, man. I was working on something today, and so far so good, The mastering stuff is a daunting task on this. I'm using Logic Pro 10. It's a good program. It sounds good. I'm really happy with what's going on, and I actually love the music. So hopefully when it comes out, we'll let everybody know, and you guys can get the CD. It's got some heavy stuff on it. The vocals, everything. I'm playing every instrument on the actual album. I'm doing all the singing, the harmonies, playing the bass, playing the guitars. I'm actually writing the drums with an artificial intelligence drum program, which is really awesome. So it's been taking time, but anyway, it's good to see you, Jack. Whose samples came back as polar bear? Nobody's samples came back as polar bear. All of the comparisons were done based on existing scientific information about how there are no polar bears in the state of Florida and no other animals with clear hair that are documented by science. And the only ones so far that I've been able to find are actually polar bears. So it was an amateur comparison, is the way I would put it. Oh, but some of that stuff that Sykes did, I think, came back as polar bear. I think that's maybe what you're referring to. A while back, 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, the Sykes thing got some polar bear stuff. No problem, Dan. Hope that answers your question, Tracy. But you already knew that. You knew that. Kat, the samples will be analyzed when the funding becomes available. We tried to get one sample analyzed from Central Florida and ran into problems with the scientist, and money is what it is. It's all about the money, right? Man, we got to try to remember that these people work for a living, right? Like, this is my job. I'm working right now. It's my job. You know what I mean? Cryptozoologist full time. Some people work at printing shops. Some people do construction. Some people are lawyers, attorneys. Some people run shipping businesses. Some people have their own restaurants. This is my job. Scientists, especially forensic hair analysis specialists, that's what they do for a living, and it's very expensive. It's $200 to $300 an hour to have them examine samples. And while we sent money, I think she just held the bag up and looked at it, and that was what we got for $300. So in the end, it never got examined, and she kept my samples, which to me is ridiculous. But it's in Australia, so there are some hair samples being examined inadvertently. One of our members that was with us in the Central Florida expeditions in 2018, we all collected hair samples at this area where we had the members camp out for cryptoreality.us. And those samples made their way to the Pacific Northwest from one of our members, and they're currently being tested. It's my understanding that MUFON has some of the hair from our expeditions in our research areas in Central Florida, and that some of the hair also is being tested in Mexico by forensic hair experts down there. And I think that's through Claudia Ackley. That's happening. Let's see what else we got. Okay. It really looks like polar bear hair. It does. You know what I mean? It looks like polar bear hair. Oh, well, there's some goofball joking that I did where I inserted a polar bear or something. You know what I mean? Some like makeshift chop up, kind of thing. But that was like a sarcastic joke. And it's actually on the communities tab. If you look at it, when we put it out, we were joking about that. Let's see what we got. Oh. weirdo in here doing something. Okay. Mel Blank. Let's see. What do you got, Mel? Mark, would you ever collab with Melba Ketchum? I already have. I have. I collaborated with her to when I had a show on a network in 2011 and 2012. I saw what was happening. I contacted her and I told her my opinion about which way she would go with she should go. She chose to go another way. She then recontacted me after everything blew up, and my network was going to represent her in confronting the National Academy of Sciences and the peer review journals that were screwing that study over and her and her reputation. And we were going to actually run a public petition to have those samples, those DNA samples, retested or re-peer reviewed with public oversight, and the whole thing got shut down. It was horrible. I ended up losing my show over it. So collaboration, I don't know. You know, I look at everything and it's. I'm gonna go ahead and put that person out of here. Oh, okay, there we go. As far as collaboration goes, I mean, we've asked her in the past if she was interested in hair. I think she's got her hands full, and really, she needs money for testing. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. I don't know that I see anything like that going on in the future immediately, but I'm certainly open to helping contribute to the validation of the species in any way that I can, as long as it doesn't involve the dismissal of the evidence that we brought in from the field. You know what I mean? I mean, I have what I believe to be saliva in a DNA trap. I saw the individual at the DNA trap. No one's going to tell me that it's some kind of extinct bear or that it's normal human DNA. There's no people opening dirty peanut butter jars in our research areas. We study Sasquatch. So I'm real funny about all that stuff. When the time is right and the situation presents itself, we'll have it all tested. Music question. Is there a program that plays the band music minus the instrument you want to actually play? The idea for me would be nice to practice with. Sure, you can actually use YouTube. If you search out rhythm tracks for whatever song you want, you can practice the leads. I know, several guys that I played with over the years used that. If I had cover songs, I used it myself. I think one of the songs I did was with my band that I used YouTube for was Alice in Chains' Stone. And I looked it up and it had the bass track, the drum track, and the leads and the vocals, but no rhythm because I'm a rhythm player and I would do the vocals. So that was great. It worked out great. I learned that song real easy from doing that. So on YouTube, you can see that. There you go, Dharmacist. You know what I mean? Your thoughts on drones for this type of research? Drones have a very limited application in research in the areas that you really want to use them, where we research, because a lot of it is thick brush. It's difficult explaining, like everything sounds good when you say it. It's real difficult when you start to apply these things in the field. Real quick, early on, we realized we're not allowed to fly drones in some of these areas. Just like that, the FAA eliminates your ability to use it. The areas, thankfully, that we research, we are allowed to use these drones. We have to proceed with caution is the message from the FAA, because they're wildlife sensitive areas, right? What you find is when you take the drone off on cloudy days, the signal from the drone through the satellites to the iPad and the remote control is weakened. So you start looking into amplifiers and all these things, extra antennas and all this stuff, and it starts to get expensive. But the other thing is when you try to fly it into these areas that they are laying in the daytime, you realize that there's some kind of a signal disruption going on. And what it is, I think, honestly, is the forest canopy itself is alive. Have you ever seen the movie Avatar? That's real. That field, that energy, the forest has an energy to it, and it disrupts feed, man. And I'm talking about thick forest. I'm not talking about some sparse shit where you see these guys racing, it's that kind of thing. There's no canopy. I'm talking about a lid overhead, vines hanging, all of this stuff. I'm talking about jungle stuff that looks like the movie Avatar. There's an energy or some type of a field in there. When you fly into it, you can literally watch the resolution. The closer you get, this is all over the place. It's not incidental to some kind of a device creating a disruptive field, even though it's obvious that we have something like that going on in certain spots where we've flown the drone. It doesn't seem to be anything like that. And so when you get in these areas and you start flying, the slightest wrong movement and it's down, it's gone, it's done. $1,500, ixnay, explosion. I personally have crashed one into a tree because the auto avoidance system picked up a bird that flew into its path, and it tried to avoid the bird and flew into a palm tree going 40 miles an hour. 50 pieces, man. You know what I mean? Everything sounds good until you get out there and you realize, wow, there's a learning curve with all this, and then there are limitations and setbacks and things that just are a part of trying to fly in these areas that the Sasquatch live. There are applications for it. I specifically really think that a thermal drone has some serious applications at night. You don't need to fly in the brush. You can fly over it and still see the thermal signatures. Our drones are useless at night. We don't have a thermal camera for the drone. So Scott and I have had many discussions about these things. Many other people have. These cameras are very expensive. Let's see. The collective. Yeah, right. No, Deborah, I don't get into that. I don't get into that whole spiritualist point of view on this, and I try to keep that out of my research because I see where it leads. And where it leads is people start to think they understand things having never looked into it. And so what we do is we go in and we try to examine these things and understand them from a scientific perspective, which is actually more accurate, right? It would be a comparison would be the understanding that a Native American has of the Sasquatch 500 years ago and the understanding that crypto reality has of the Sasquatch right now. See, Native Americans, although they coexisted with them and they probably had a real good understanding of how to coexist with them, explaining certain aspects of their existence was kind of a spiritual kind of a nature with them. They're ghosts, they're the mountain devils, they're this, they're that. That's unscientific. We're trying to actually put a formula together and evaluate all this so that people can actually use our formula. So I steer clear of all that. What I see is, and I've shot enough footage to tell you that this is correct, the plants themselves have energy fields. They give off energy. Every living thing gives off energy. That doesn't mean that they have a personality or that there's a consciousness involved in there. On some level, maybe there is. Until science can actually measure that and accurately say something like that, we stay away from that. Now, if you go out in let's say you go out in your backyard and you shoot a section of your backyard that has some ferns in it. When you take that and you put that, if you take that clip of those ferns in your backyard and you put it into a film editor, shooting with a digital camera now, I can't speak intelligently to whether 35 millimeter film or celluloid will show this same thing, but digital cameras, you will pick this up. When you put it on your timeline and you zoom in on that timeline, you're zooming in on the pixels. As you get closer, the closer you get, you will begin to see a distortion that outlines every leaf. And in that distortion, you'll have the leaf itself in a very sharp, crisp edge, and depending on how close you get, there's a ring of distortion, the exact shape of every single leaf. In that ring of distortion, which I honestly believe is the energy coming off of those plants, it will blur what's in the background. Now, when you combine all of these different leaves, you're going to see this. All you have to do, you don't have to take my word on this. All you have to do is what I just said. If you want to see that this exists, having seen that, when I fly my drone in there and I notice that the signal is diminished, and as I get deeper under that canopy and it gets darker, the signal continues to diminish, and it just is to the point where you're starting to worry whether it's going to stay flying because it's starting to sway from the satellites being dropped off, you pull that thing and you back it out. You know what I mean? It's too much of an investment to fly in those dangerous situations. So, but in looking at this, that has a lot to do with people shooting footage. You're getting a lot of distortion, and it's not just that the footage is blurry because the camera's shaking, which is 99% of it. It also really, honestly, I believe this, man, because I've seen it thousands of times reviewing footage. There is a field around these plants, and you can see it when you examine the film. All right. I don't see too many more questions, so I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here, man. Green Mountain Cryptid. You still have nightmares? I do too, buddy. I do too. You know, not from the one I saw in 2013, but subsequent experiences in the last 5 years in researching. You know, and then you got to pick up your cameras and go back in. You know what I mean? It's tough to deal with it, man. It's PTSD. It's real. You know what I mean? It's very real. Could Bigfoot be a chimera? That's an excellent question. I think that there is information contained in at least one DNA study, the Ketchup study, that suggests that, right? I think we're looking at something that within the family groups that we've documented, you see tremendous variations. I think that the technical definition of chimera in the past and the examples we've seen in science fiction films or that we've read about in, say, you know, history, Greek mythology, and all that kind of stuff. Those are different descriptions. I think it very, very well could be some type of a chimera. I can't speak intelligently about all of that kind of stuff. I just know we see some extreme variations in bone structure, in the shapes of the heads, and all that kind of stuff. They're an interesting species, to say the least, man. Let's see what else we got. That's about it, guys. Listen, we're going to be working hard in the next weeks. There's going to be in the next couple weeks. There's going to be a film this week, and I'm working on that now. What we find in it, I'm not sure. Some of the data, like I put something in our films every week. You know, I try to, whether I have to go back and do something to pull something out. We don't always get these guys, man. You know what I mean? That's like a misconception. Detractors will say that, oh, they can find 7 sasquatch in a bush. You know? Well, if they're in there, they're in there. If they're not, they're not. Most of the time, they're not. You know what I mean? But, you know, looking at what's going on, most of the stuff that we retrieve from the field, I keep for data to use on our next expeditions. You know what I mean? We're trying to only show you guys the stuff that, you know, we consider to be, you know, really good data. And so whether there's something in it this week remains to be seen. I am pulling them out. I sent Scott a shot of one from Saturday morning just today that I found. Hopefully, in looking at more frames, we're going to find some better frames, and the film will end up working out good. But in any case, I want to thank all you guys for coming and sticking with crypto reality through all the bullshit that, you know, people put us through. You know what's going on. You can see it. Anybody can see it. Anybody who tells you they can't see it is full of shit. That's just what it is. And you can tell them I said that. Anybody can see what's going on here. I have children who actively say, oh, look at a monkey, look at a monkey. If kids can see it, you don't have any problem seeing what's in there. You know what I mean? That's that denial. That's that I don't want to admit thing. You know what I mean? So we appreciate all you guys, and we'll see you again soon. Have a good night.